Welcome to this week's episode of Here We Journey with Pastor Greg. I know I didn't release an episode last week. It was a little bit busy with Holy Week, and we have some company in town. My mom and her husband came into town, so we've been enjoying our visit with them. So I ask for, once again, your grace in understanding why there wasn't an episode posted last week. This week I'm recording actually earlier than I usually do because last night I had the opportunity to go and see a professional wrestler do his kind of one-man show / comedy act, and it was fantastic. If you don't know, I've been a professional wrestling fan pretty much my entire life. I was born in the early 80s, so I grew up with the rise of Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan and everything that happened with that era of professional wrestling. Then came certainly the Attitude Era with Stone Cold and The Rock and Mick Foley and DX, and of course WCW, the NWO, Sting, all those classic kind of wrestling superstars. I have a small collection of autographs and other wrestling memorabilia, including the $1 Million Belt replica. If you're joining me on YouTube, you'll see just a small selection of those memorabilia as I panned the camera up. So you see I have the New Day Funko Pops, I have Macho Man glasses, a replica of the Macho Man King Macho crown, and then right there you see the $1 Million Belt. And I certainly have a lot more that you can't see right now. So last night, my wife and I did a date night where we went and saw the hardcore legend, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mick Foley. #1 New York Times bestseller, hardcore legend, king of the deathmatch, now turned stand-up comedy one-man show. And we had a blast. There was some unexpectedness because a current WWE superstar was part of the show as well. But hearing the stories of Mick Foley was really any wrestling fan's dream. And then I, of course, bought the package where I could meet Mick, shake his hand, well, really fist bump. We are still living in a COVID world after all. Chat for just a few minutes and then get a couple autographs, get a picture taken with him, and it was a great time. But during his show, he was asked for any advice. He has a Q&A session of his show, and there was a lot of local wrestling talent. People that were trying to make it into the world of professional wrestling. One of those individuals stood up and asked, what advice do you have for someone that's trying to get in the business, is trying to be successful in the business? And he gave a couple great answers, but he said one that has kind of made me ponder the past almost 24 hours or so. And it was, don't get hung up on one definition of success. So in this specific example, he said, look, don't get so focused on the only measurement of your success is if you become a WWE superstar, or you become the WWE World Champion, or like some of the old school wrestlers, one of which was just recently inducted into the Hall of Fame, Vader. Don't get so focused that your career only means something if you're inducted into a Hall of Fame. Don't get that tunnel vision, because there's a lot of other ways and other indications when you are successful. Yes, keep pushing for those things that you want and keep driving for those things, and be aware that there are times where success may look different than what you originally envisioned. And it made me think, how often do we, as just everyday individuals, not people that are trying to make it in the wrestling biz, get so focused on, oh, I'm only successful if, like, there's only one thing that defines success. And we get fixated on that. We get hyper focused on that. And sometimes it is very beneficial. And yet sometimes when we get hyper focused like that, we miss these other indications of success, of making a mark, of making a difference, of really doing what we want to do and what we think will be what leads to this other thing. Or it's some sort of validation, right? Hall of Fame. I'm only successful if I'm if I'm inducted into the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Or I'm only successful if I'm recognized as a 40 under 40, or if I'm honored with this award at my business, or so on and so forth, right? We often will get caught up in those slots. That only matters if. Only matters my hard work, my effort, everything I've put out. Only matters if I am reaching this one goal or given this one honor or recognition. That's the only time. And what Mick was trying to say was, that's not true. Really, if we can look ourselves in the eye at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and know we've done everything we can. And look, sometimes what we can do on one day is completely different from what we can do on another day. Some days our 100% is different than the next day's 100%. We have to recognize that. We have to be realistic about that. We have to give ourselves grace when that is the case. I think of some of my friends who are cosplayers. I think the world of them. They are fantastic. They are amazing. They are talented. And I'm pretty sure, and I hope I'm not speaking out of line, I think each one of them would say, over the course of time, they have gotten better with crafting their costumes, with crafting their props, whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean that very first costume or that very first prop was not successful. They gave their all. They did the best that they could at that point in time. Could they do better now? Yes. But let's not negate what did happen and the success and the willingness and the effort that was put into that the first time. As a pastor, I'm always trying to be better. Always trying to improve my skills with this podcast, with the social media content, but also with doing things like preaching. I think that I am a pretty good preacher. I've been given a lot of compliments on my sermons. If you like the style of way that I preach, I've gotten a lot of great compliments. And I know, looking back at it, because I have some video of some of those first sermons, I have improved. I have grown. I have grown in an understanding of how to do the craft, the art of preaching. I've also, previously before seminary, I understand my roles in the nonprofits I worked for involved public speaking. I'm going to give you a little secret here. There was a time where I was scared of public speaking. I didn't want to do it. I didn't think I was any good at it. It was something I avoided. I was okay one-on-one or with like small group of 5, maybe 10. Outside of that, my knees would shake, my blood pressure would rise, I would start to glisten a little bit. I was nervous, I had anxiety, I was scared. Over the course of college and then my nonprofit career, I had to overcome that and I had to learn the skills. Was the Greg who did the public speaking at the very beginning of my nonprofit career, he was successful. Those speeches were successful because I gave it my all. I gave it everything I could. Looking back at those videos of early sermons, if there were videos of my early presentations as a nonprofit executive, they could have been better. But that doesn't mean they weren't successful. Because I could look myself in the eye at the end of the day, or as I was driving away from that event where I spoke, I could say, you know what? That was hard. It wasn't great. There's some additional lessons I need to learn on how to public speak. And I gave it everything I had. I did my best. I did my absolute best that I could at that moment, in that time, in that context. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And it's hard. It's hard to recognize the fact that when we look back at things we've done in the past and we recognize that we've grown, if you're like me, maybe sometimes we're negative about what we did previously because it's not as good, quotation mark, as we are now. I'm sure if I keep this podcast going another 10 years, I go back to these early episodes, I will probably think, oh, it was okay. I was learning. It could have been better. But right now, I am being successful because I'm doing it. I'm doing the best I can. I'm learning. I'm progressing. And I'm making myself better. But again, I'm able to look myself in the eye and say, look, that was all that I had. That was the best I could do. Then I'm successful. And it's worth the effort. So even when we don't succeed by modern standards, or even when we don't succeed with the benchmarks that we have set before ourselves, maybe it's a matter of reframing things. And reframing it in that, did I do my best? Did I do everything within my capability? If the answer is no, well then we need to have another conversations with ourselves. We need to really analyze and deal with some of that. On the other hand, if we can say, yes, that was my best, well, then you know what? Pat yourself on the back. Good job. Now, still better yourselves. Don't just rest there, but do take the time to reframe and be successful. There's always some level of success, even in those situations where we feel we have failed. There's bound to be something that we did succeed in. And that's a hard way because, again, if you're like me, I have perfectionistic tendencies. For example, this cough, right? Like, my allergies are a little bit crazy. I've now coughed twice. I probably should go through and find every little touch of a cough and every sniffle that the microphone picks up. But I'm not going to this time. I have in the past. I'm not going to this time because I want to really show the raw footage. And I really want to say, you know what? This is okay. This is the best I have today. I'm not going to get hung up on the number of listeners or the number of sponsors or the number of subscriptions. Those will come. Those will build eventually. But right now, I'm framing success in doing this. Again, putting my voice that I am learning and continuing to learn, even at 40 years old, learning to like, learning to appreciate the actual sound of my own voice. It's something I have struggled with. It's not that kind of deep baritone bass type voice that so many want to hear. My voice is not that. My voice is a different register. My cadence is a little bit different than what many people are expected. I know that sometimes I word things a little bit off. Not in the normal, usual way to word things. So I'm learning, I'm having to learn what success means with using my voice. Not what I say, but actually how it sounds, what it sounds like. My ego kind of kicks in because what I say is worthwhile to say. I don't have a problem with that. I don't feel like I don't have something to say. I believe we all have something to say and something worthwhile to say. It's the actual tone and register and cadence of the voice that I kind of have to embrace and continue to learn to embrace. That's success for me. Putting this out there for those to listen and kind of marketing it and posting it on social media saying that it's there, encouraging people to actually listen to my voice and the way it sounds, it's kind of still scary for me. Something that I have to deal with. So that's success for me right now. I could look at all these podcasts that launch and have hundreds or thousands of listeners and subscribers, and they're making, a good amount of money on merchandise and subscriptions and ads and all that stuff. Would I love to be there? Absolutely. Could I be there someday? Maybe. But right now, if I were to judge my podcast as being successful based on that, then I would stop. I would give up. But that's not what this is about. The success of this is different than that. So I appreciate Mick Foley, the professional wrestler, the New York Times best-selling author, the stand-up comedian, for reminding me of this important thing. This thing that I am continuing to work on of reframing what is success. So I ask you today, what does success mean to you? How have you been successful today? Let's go there. Let's ask ourselves that question. How have I been successful today? Where in my day today have I given everything that I have, did my best, committed, was intentional? There's where you're successful at. And maybe it's something small. But you know what? Something small can turn into something big. Jesus talks about a mustard seed, right? The mustard seed does eventually grow into the king of all shrubs. A small thing can become something big and powerful and mighty and important. So let us remember that. My friends, I hope you had a great week. I hope the week in front of you is fantastic as well. And as always, as I close out, know that you are loved. You are valued. You are appreciated. You are seen. Regardless of what society tells you, you matter. You, the person hearing my voice right now, you make this world a better place simply by being in it. You are loved. Be well, and I will talk to you next week.